7:33. Welcome everyone to the Town of Winchester Planning Board meeting for March the 16th, 2021. You are all being recorded by WinCam, and I don't know if we're simulcasting, but certainly the recording will be available for later viewing on WinCam. Our chair, Heather Von Mering, will be joining us later this evening, hopefully before 7:45, but if not, then she will join us when she can. And if she is later, then maybe we can move the meeting minutes approval up just to give her an extra few minutes. I think we're going to do the 7:45 on time because we have presumably town legal will be joining us. So Brian, would you like to give us some of your updates?
Sure. Today, a number of people from Town Hall, from Engineering Department, as well as Department of Public Works, and then members from the Chamber, as well as the Select Board, as well as Heather Hannon from the Planning Board, did a site walk in the downtown area looking at potential traffic calming, as well as how that dovetail with some beautification, but mostly related to traffic and parking. If Heather Hannon wanted to go a little bit further on that, she can do that in a bit. But that was today related to the study that's being done by Tool through the Select Board. What else? The local rapid recovery grant this is in the form of technical assistance that's being given to the town. And it's mainly it affects the town center. And I'm having a first meeting with our consultant this week. So that will kind of focus in on what types of activities, as well as types of trainings we're going to be that the consultant is going to be working with the business community in the town center in order to rebound from the pandemic. So that's this week. The filing of the 654 Main Street decision. The goal is the end of this week, but I think in reality it'll probably be filed by the middle of next week, something around that time. I know people have been asking, so that's just kind of an update of around the time that will be filed, probably by the middle of next week. And that's all I have for now.
Excellent, thank you much. I realized that I forgot to introduce myself. This is Dave Jurius. I am the Vice Chair / Clerk. So I have one thing that I wanted to talk about, but I would like, is there anything that any of the rest of the board would like to provide an update on?
Well, it's Maureen. It's not an update, but a question. I'm wondering where we are with our North Main Street. Obviously, some of us will be leaving the board in a few weeks, but I think some of us would like to the extent that it's a public process, participate.
Sure. We have not set the second of the two community meetings right now. The update is that they are in the middle of analyzing the data from the small survey that was conducted during the actual live presentation, but due to the people sending the email out with the survey, they've been receiving more. So I don't know how long the cutoff is. I guess that's the first thing that I don't know when the cutoff of the survey is, but it is still ongoing. So if anyone wants to still watch that video and take the survey related to the vision of North Main Street, please do so. If you don't know where to find it, you can email me or the planning board. And then after they analyze that data, then there will be another community meeting that will not only share that data, but then have more feedback, more neighborhood feedback participation.
So thank you. So I guess we're just sitting tight. Could I ask you though, as a follow-up, while you're in contact with them and before another meeting, that you help them and maybe Diab, I certainly could, we could all be asking for contributions to describe to them and actually identify where redevelopment has been proposed or considered, let's say in the past 4 or 5 years, because some of those are just on the back burner, but they're going to come forward again. There was a project, for example, that would have involved DPW land that was on the west side of North Main Street. We all know the project across from the grocery store is under appeal. That's obvious. But I think they weren't aware, it seemed, of the project next to the park because they put in certain things they thought were more likely for redevelopment and less. But I think we actually know where the likely movement is going to take place.
Yeah, I imagine, Maureen, that when they come before the board to present the results of their survey, that would be a great time to start talking about to fill in some of the gaps. So
Well, it'll fall to you or Brian or the whole board, but I won't probably be here. So I just think it would be, as I saw from that last presentation, they were clearly not aware of a lot that we know. And again, some of it's not active right now, but we know that there's been interest within the past 4 or 5 years, and that suggests it'll come back again.
yeah, no, there were obviously a couple of things that they weren't aware of, but I think we can. I mean, I'm putting those things down as things to make sure that we fill them in on one way or the other. So I think that we should, we don't have another, we've got two public meetings where we're going to have public input. And I think that's all that we have so far scheduled, but there certainly will be before the board. So I don't know.
This is Cheryl. May I ask, was it part of their scope to research the more recent developments in front of the board or the zoning board
Wasn't specifically
while doing
listed.
their evaluation?
Yeah, it wasn't specifically listed in the scope, but I've already talked with Josh about several different projects. We've given him plans of several different projects and he's very interested, and it's not something out of his lane.
It would be, yeah, sort of almost existing conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and then a related, also on Main Street, Brian, you were going to try to do some outreach to Mr. Marino. Any luck with that?
No, I did not do that. I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to add another question to the updates. Brian, has there been any progress with the Swanton and Washington group and RFP?
No, there has been. So I think the last round of edits were incorporated. That included, I believe it was Dennis's final comments based upon the planning board's recommendations, because we had made edits to those guidelines that Dennis had written. So Dennis edited those comments. Then it went to Jennifer Goldson and her team. And those are finally done. Now it's essentially sitting on a shelf for when and if we need it. The actual update in terms of what's happening is lawyers from not so much the town as much, but lawyers. There's potentially deals being worked out privately without the town involved. Like, it's still cooking. Like, I don't know what's exactly going on there. All I know is that we have not started proceedings, as far as I know, to take the property. And we obviously cannot issue the RFP until we have some type of control over the property. And at the moment, it is not looking like that's the direction that it's going anyway.
Oh, okay. That's great to know.
Yeah.
And then maybe this is what Diab's going to report on. So sorry if I'm jumping the gun, but I do wonder if there's any. I think you had said you attended the ZBA hearing. So maybe this is it, actually, the one on the Meineke site. What's going on with that?
Yeah, well, I'd actually, I wanted to do that a little later. I wanted to, first, I have two things then to discuss. Brian, on the Washington Swanton, could we get a hold of that revised language of the RFP?
Yeah, I got it from Barry, I believe, on Friday. I'll make sure that goes out to the board. The full RFP, that'll definitely go to the board. Yep.
Okay, excellent. So I will, let's see, on the Meineke site, I can do that quickly. And then I want to speak about a project with the Network for Social Justice on the effect of zoning and redlining in Winchester on housing discrimination. So at the ZBA held a hearing, was it last Thursday, I believe, on 974 Main Street, I believe. I'm going to get that number wrong.
972.
Pardon?
972.
It's close. 972. At that meeting, the zoning board required that the petitioners hire a 53G consultant, and they continued the hearing until June. I forget the exact date. They were, apparently the ZBA had asked them to get a consultant back in November, which they did not do. They came before us, as this board might remember, a couple weeks ago, I believe, and presented it, and we had a large number of comments and recommended a 53G consultant. The ZBA voted to require them to do so. I don't know why they didn't do it previously, but in any case, they were directed to respond to our comments. And I think, Brian, have you been approached to get that 53G yet?
So yeah, Janine, so they've only started, the ZBA has only started requiring, like contracts and admin for that, and, collecting checks and making accounts and all that very recently. And I've been doing that for them. So now Janine is officially asked to start that process. At the moment, I have Dennis and other consultants. The first thing I'm looking for the ZBA from is a scope. So I believe they're trying to work on some type of a scope, because there must be something specific that they that has to get in to make this contract happen. So yes, that has been requested.
Excellent. Okay. And let me get to my last point, and then we are just almost off schedule. So last Thursday, the Response and Advocacy Committee, I believe is called, of the Winchester Network for Social Justice met to discuss a workshop that they were planning on the effect of zoning on discriminatory housing, or how it leads to discrimination in housing. And this board may recall that John Serbier had brought this up with us late last summer or early fall. And the Housing Partnership Board reached out to us, asked whether we would be interested in having a program which would be comparable to the one they had in Arlington last summer, which was a pretty remarkable program. So this board said, sure, why not? And so unfortunately, nothing really happened over the next several months. And the Network for Social Justice initially didn't believe they had the resources to do this, but apparently they now do, and it is something they are working on now. And initially they had proposed having this workshop in mid to early April, but the Housing Partnership Board and the Planning Board wouldn't really be able to do much in that time frame. And so they have agreed to push it off in order for us to be able to provide some support, more than just having our name on a piece of paper saying that we are supporting, but actually being part of the presentation. So I know this board had made a commitment to do that before, and I believe that commitment still continues. So unless someone has an objection, I am going to continue working directly with the Response and Advocacy Committee from the Network for Social Justice, and hopefully this will be happening. They're thinking about having two programs, one of which would be from a historical perspective, and the other one would be more of what is happening currently and what could happen in Winchester, and the opportunities and the obstacles, both from a more of a holistic view of how everything goes down, from the politics to the zoning and things like that. So hopefully that'll be done um, in the next couple of months. So that was it. So if anyone,
Heather Hannon has her hand raised.
oh, you do, Heather? I'm sorry, I don't see it.
That's okay. I have a separate question, but what you just said sounded great. I'm just curious, are they bringing in an expert, like a speaker, to facilitate that, or
They,
how?
that is still in discussion. I believe they do intend to look for someone. I'm going to be at their meeting this Thursday where I will, they have a broad outline of what the meeting will be covering. And I don't know if they've gotten into the details of trying to pin down, but I think they are looking for someone with local knowledge. Yeah. The program in Arlington had some academics who actually live in Arlington and have a deep knowledge of this area, so that we could reach out. Hope perhaps there's someone in Winchester with the same knowledge. But
Well, you should know, because already we've got even some effort going on to try to not be overlapping, but both Claire Dempsey, who's the consultant working on the research in writing up the B forms for the North End that includes our formal, I guess you could say, it was actually mixed race, but it was mixed racially, but the neighborhood where the Black community lived in Winchester. So Claire's been documenting that, including identifying very specifically where the Black community lived. That's possible through the census. And in the meantime, Ellen Knight has been doing that with work with Nancy Schrock, mainly, I believe, focusing on the community that was members of the New Hope Church on Cross Street. So even getting them together, meaning Ellen with Claire, has been a bit of a job. But I believe they're now on the same, working together. So they literally were duplicating the work of the other. So we've got two people already working in the historic sense on what's happened in Winchester.
that's really good to know. I'll pass that along. I know that we've Felicity Tuttle has a copy of the actual redlining map for Winchester from the 30s. Yeah. So there's certainly, so I will pass this information along to the committee. Thank you.
Okay, my real question was actually for Brian, if there was an update on that land you had mentioned behind Mahoney's.
No update. I've gotten a lot of calls. So I guess for those who don't know, there's about a 5-acre parcel that's up for sale, and that's around them in the back of the Mahoney's landscaping company and it's on Rocky Ledge Terrace. You can imagine what it's filled with. And if you were just going to do about a single family homes, you're probably building, it's unclear, maybe 7 or 8, I don't know, something like that. So it's being kind of marketed as either 7 or 8 single family homes or some type of potential cluster style development, just like across the street at Greystone, or a potential friendly 40B. So those are the 3 things that they're generally have been talking about for that land. But in terms of an update, no, there's no update from the town side. I do know the chair of the planning board, who's not here at the moment. I know she certainly alerted the select board to this and let them know that this, obviously could be a really good location for a friendly 40B, or at least to look at it. So I don't have an update from the select board, but I can confirm that they're aware of the parcel, and but I don't know what they plan to do with it yet.
When you say that a lot of people are calling you, do you mean that potential buyers are calling you to ask about what's permissible there?
Yeah, and what I tell them is that under all circumstances, if it's not going to be a 40B, if they're trying to go through, and most people they reference the ARC-dot, and I was like, well, the ARC-dot's not allowed there. The ARC-dot, you need 10 acres. The whole point of the ARC-dot is to cluster those houses so that you have a lot of open space. Only at 5 acres, if you cluster those, it's not really the intent of the ARC-dot. It's something else. So what I said was that it would either be a modified ARC-dot or a totally new overlay district that would have to be created to make this happen. So that's just a fact that it's town meeting. If it's not a 40B, it's town meeting. So
It's currently zoned agricultural at some part, and so does it have to be rezoned anyway, regardless?
well, it could be an overlay.
Yeah, but something has to be done.
Something has to be. That's what I'm saying. There's town meeting action, unless there's a friendly 40B or a hostile, whatever we want to call it. Unless there's some type of mixed income development there, a zoning change would be necessary, whether it's an overlay district or otherwise.
Thanks.
Sure. Legal counsel is here. We're still, and so is the town engineer. So those were kind of outside of the board. Those were the two people that we needed here.
Yep.
So I don't know, Diab, if you wanted to move forward with Heather, or she might not be here till later. It's unclear. So
I think we should move forward on the subdivision rules and regs, just so we keep going. And apparently my Zoom is not telling me when people's hands are being raised, so.
I'll let you know. Oh, I
please.
actually chatted you that.
Yes, and I on my screen, that was so tiny, I didn't see it. So I've got my
So
chat
tiny.
window open, and
Okay.
so why don't you introduce us to the subdivision rules and regs discussion?
Sure. Art Krieger, Town Council, and Beth Rudolph, Town Engineer, thanks for coming tonight. We kind of started this conversation in relation to a number of different projects, but really the interaction between the subdivision rules and regulations and the zoning bylaw. So there's a number of different things that Art had looked at, a few intently, and I think we're going to talk about those and the implications of some of those changes. Art, I don't know if you wanted to start in a specific place in the zoning bylaw, or if you wanted to start in a specific place in the subdivision rules and regs. We can just go straight there.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for having me. My focus in this discussion is going to be on the interplay between the last clause of the site plan approval bylaw, so 9517, I think it is, and subdivision control. And this, of course, is the problem raised on Abbey Road, which we've talked about before, and I'm glad that Beth is here tonight as well. I have not done a wide-ranging review of the regulations because I'm not sure that's the most productive way to proceed, frankly. I mean, if there are problems that the board or Brian have identified, I'm happy to try and translate those into workable regulations or update the regulations. But I didn't think it was my scope to just sort of peruse all the regulations and see what I thought could use improvement. They're almost very quickly, when you get into redrafting bylaws or regulations, it turns from a legal or drafting issue to a policy issue. And the policy decisions, of course, need to come from you to me, not the other way around. But let's focus on 9517 and its interplay with subdivision control. So as you know, 9511 to 6 have to do with construction in various districts, buildings of various sizes. Requires site plan approval. 7 is not tied to any construction. It's any change in slope. It could be a change in slope in conjunction with a subdivision plan. It could be a change in slope because somebody feels like regrading his or her land. We saw the change in slope to put a to go from level driveway to a driveway going down under, and there in the forget the name of the case, but the 17 Ginn Road maybe, where the issue was whether that was the kind of change in slope that was contemplated. Even that was in conjunction with reconstruction or expansion of the house. But the real question is, and we did touch on this last time, when a project is in subdivision control before you for subdivision approval, and you are focused, as Beth has described, mostly on the grading of the roads and the infrastructure for drainage and all of that, what do you do in subdivision control over the regrading of lots? And what do you contemplate? Do you contemplate that the Board of Appeals would have any role doing a parallel site plan review of the grading of the lots? I suppose the way this is written, it would be not just the lots, but this would require site plan approval for the grading of the roads also, which clearly duplicates, if not, raises potential inconsistencies with subdivision control. So when Brian and I talked about this a week or two ago, I said, really the issue is the board happy with this bylaw? Before we start drafting regulations, I can't just draft a regulation that says this part of the bylaw doesn't apply under subdivision if the project is in subdivision control. I can't just go around creating exceptions. You can't just go around creating exceptions to an unambiguous bylaw. So we sort of stopped in our discussion about focusing on the regs and started focusing more on this part of the bylaw. And of course, the site plan approval section of the bylaw 951 has been modified and tweaked several times over the past few years. And the last thing anybody wants is to put it before town meeting again. But I think the discussion needs to start with that. What do you want to be covered by this provision? And then let's figure out the regulations that would implement it.
Okay, so my recollection of our discussion was, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that we were concerned that after whatever grade change was approved under subdivision control, that someone could come in later and ask to do another grade change over and above that. And that was where the concern was whether they could subsequently continue or change the grade even more through a special permit. That was my recollection.
So that's the easy case, Diab, to me, meaning site plan approval is required because then the change in grade is not being done in conjunction or in parallel with subdivision approval. It just happens to be on land that went through subdivision approval already. If you're changing the grade again outside of or after the subdivision approval process, the way this is written, and in your example just now, you need site plan approval from the ZBA. That's easy to me.
Okay. But in order for the 9517 to come into play, someone would actually have to file for a special permit. How would there be a parallel process between having the ZBA do this and the subdivision control do this at the same time? I guess I don't understand why there would be a conflict.
Well, so now this is not the example you just gave. This is a different scenario. The project is in subdivision review. It's changing the slope over 6%, over 500 square feet. The way this is written, it needs to get ZBA site plan approval at this, and it needs to get your subdivision approval. Zoning and subdivision are separate statutory schemes, and ordinarily, if you need to do something to satisfy each of them independently, then you do. So whether the potential conflict is the planning board signs off on subdivision approval, and the ZBA wants to change the plan through site plan. Once through its site plan review, requires the plan be modified. Possibly the applicant then needs to come back to you to modify the subdivision approval, depending on whether you focused on the grade issue or not. or you get site plan approval, but you deny or modify the subdivision. So there's a potential for inconsistent decisions by the two boards, which is not inherently a problem. If there are two independent statutory decisions and two independent decisions by different boards, then they can be different. Nothing says they have to come out the same way, as long as the applicant can reasonably, thread the needle and satisfy both boards and not get whipsawed. So I don't have a conceptual issue saying that if you're in subdivision control, then the applicant also, with a requisite grade change, the applicant also needs site plan approval. Now, do you want the applicant to have to get site plan approval over the roads? That is, if the change in grade is on what will be the roads, what you're squarely focused on in subdivision approval? Do you also want that seems just redundant to me to require site plan approval of the roads.
So I
Okay.
was following this. So I guess to tease this out further, it's the road seems that if it's under subdivision control and approval at the time, at some given point in time, i.e. a road is being built or prior to a road being built, that this subsection 7, really, we'd rather not have that review, which could potentially be in conflict. So that you're saying could be addressed. Probably it has to be changed in the zoning, except for when a proposed as a road is under subdivision control review at this time or something.
Except when the change in slope is part of a subdivision plan before the planning board, or that was before the plan, or something like that. Yeah,
I don't think that's a bridge too far for town meeting. I think it could be explained, but let me just follow up. Then there's the question about the sites, the building lots, and what's your view about that, Art?
Did we lose Art?
You're muted, Art.
yeah. I don't know how I got
Yeah.
muted. Sorry.
A mouse.
Yeah. I want to hear from Beth again on that, because Beth's point last time, I think, was that subdivision control focuses on the roads and the layout of the lots, but not the grading of the lots.
Yeah.
Yeah, Beth's hand is up, so
Yeah.
Beth, you're on.
Please.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's always been my understanding, and obviously I'm not attorney, but my understanding of subdivision control is that the planning board's responsibility is for oversight and approval of the road itself and any, the lot or, the right of way that the road is graded within, and then the layout of the individual lots. But the planning board's jurisdiction does not necessarily extend to the construction on those individual lots of houses or whatever. That falls under the zoning.
Well, this is, I agree, Beth, this is not quite the construction of the houses, though. The question is the jurisdiction over the grading of the lots.
Well, yeah. So I mean, I would say, sorry, maybe I shouldn't have said construction of houses. Like, and this is where the problem lies, right? Because oftentimes the lots will need to be regraded to allow for construction of the roadway, as was the case, for example, on Abbey Road, where there was significant site work all around to reshape the area for an adequate slope on the road. But then when a house developer comes in, there may be, and they have a plan and an architect that changes, maybe what was originally intended to be built out on the lot. And there could be, one developer for the road, and then the house lots can be sold separately to different developers or individual homeowners. So it's challenging because there could be multiple iterations of what's going to happen on those lots. That's not necessarily foreseen at the stage where the subdivision roadway is approved.
Which, if I understand you correctly, if the lots are being regraded as part of the subdivision process, then the planning board will be looking at that regrading, because it's looking at drainage across the whole site. But if the lots are regraded later on, for the first time or again, in conjunction with the house construction, that's not before the planning board. Which I agree with, and I think that's a variation on what we said earlier.
So
That-
it's Maureen. I do think, I mean, it's not great, and I honestly, I haven't combed through this subdivision control bylaw, but I was there and I'd read it multiple times when it was before us and before we adopted it. But anyway, the first thing that sort of randomly I've found is 7.3.1 about lots. And maybe Art, had you just looked at that before this meeting in the subdivision control?
In the subdivision regs?
Yeah.
No, I have not.
Okay, so 7.3.1 is lot arrangement. Lots shall be arranged so there will be no foreseeable difficulties due to topography, soils, wetlands, bedrock, improper drainage, or other conditions in securing permits to build upon all lots in compliance with the zoning bylaw. So you can see how it goes. Probably you would want to look at 7.3.1, but that's just the first thing I grabbed. But the general goal overall is the goal, and maybe that's just worth reiterating. The goal is to minimize the amount of just these giant retaining walls, which we really don't like, and the amount of cut and fill. We're trying to maintain the topography. And so to some degree, I'd say 7.3.1 in the subdivision regs it does support some control over the lots.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that in. I think you do have jurisdiction over the grading across a whole subdivision on the lots as well as for the road. And so if you don't want site plan approval, if you don't want that requirement for the road, for what will become the road, do you also not want what would be a duplicative site plan approval for the lots? That is, you would be reviewing all the grading as part of the subdivision plans, which give you topographical information. If the lots are regraded again by the house developer, then, and if it meets 9517, then they need site plan approval at that point. But that they wouldn't need it in parallel to or in conjunction with the original subdivision approval. Is that where the board wants to be?
Hope.
I think I'm still thinking that doesn't change much because it's still, you still have this overlap in if they want to change the grade after the subdivision regs. Right. So
But I think that's fine.
well, but Maureen just pointed out that if they do need to change the grade, then that's something wrong. Then they're not really complying with the subdivision regs. Could you bring up the subdivision regs, Brian, to that?
Yep, hold on a sec. I got it.
Yeah, the section that Maureen pointed out.
All right. Let me share.
Oh, it looks like our chair is here.
Yes, I'm here, but I think, Deb, you should keep going because I'm joining in the middle of a conversation and the middle of something. So go ahead,
Sure.
keep going. Sorry for my lateness with my conflict.
So, yeah, I mean, I think the idea, obviously, of subdivision is setting up the roads, you know, and the lots. Obviously, nothing to do with the houses. Everyone's in agreement there. I think the idea is that it's assumed that if someone who builds out the subdivision, meaning that they build a road and they get lots ready enough to be developed, like that's what the process is making developable lots. So I you know, to Maureen's point and what's here is, it's true that we don't have like full reign over the lots, but the whole point of setting up the subdivision is to set up buildable lots. We can't be setting up buildable lots that are on a cliff, for example.
Understood. I'm not, did you by any chance bring up that document? Because I'm still.
I'm sorry, no, it's not what you're seeing right now? I'm sorry.
I'm still seeing the zoning.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. There we
What
go.
is it now? Sorry.
Yeah, so which one was that? 7.3?
One,
So
right?
it's this was the arrangement, but then it also talks about drain. I mean, this is obviously much more intensive than a site plan review because
Right.
of the amount of time. But I mean, it's relatively the same review, but it's just it's a little more, it's more intensive.
So when I read this, I'm still trying to understand the relationship between someone coming in with a special permit after this gone through subdivision, asking for something. So obviously, a special permit doesn't mean it's not in compliance with the zoning bylaws. I mean, this one says in compliance with. If you need to grade more than 6%, it doesn't mean you're not in compliance with the zoning bylaws. What does that mean?
Site plan, it's site plan. You keep saying special permit, but I think you mean site plan review.
Yes, I do mean
Okay,
site plan
well,
review.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
my
so
apologies.
that's why you can be compliant with the zoning bylaw if it's site plan review. So
Okay,
it's a by right action. It's just site
Yeah.
plan review is still for by right actions, and that's
and I apologize, I did get those confused.
So one, seems to me there are three possibilities. One is you delete 951.7 and you leave it to subdivision control where there's a subdivision, and to 951.126 if there's construction of a building. That 9517 doesn't really add anything and creates this confusion with subdivision control. That's one possible position. Number two would be to say what I said a moment ago, that you change 7 to exclude land that's got subdivision approval. If you've got subdivision approval, then you don't need site plan approval for that, for the regrading shown on the subdivision plans. If you do further regrading that qualifies, you would need site plan approval. And the third is to say, you need site plan approval even if you're in subdivision, just because it's a separate statutory scheme by a separate board, and we don't mind a duplicative process. That's what it says now on its face. Whether that was the intent or not, I don't know. But those seem to me to be the three positions this board could take.
So my recollection of the intent of this was not, we weren't thinking about subdivision. We were thinking about existing lots and changes to slope on existing lots. So the fact that this has some sort of collision with subdivision, I think is an unintended result.
Yeah, that's my memory of the discussions, that 1 through 6 dealt with big buildings in various zones. 7 dealt with, was intended to pick up smaller buildings in any zone where the grade was being changed by a certain amount.
Yeah. So
I was gonna jump in. So on number 7 that was added in, for the 5, we had also dealt with retaining walls with some of the issues that we discussed. And I don't think it was to, existing. I do think it was also intended for new construction, because we were the reason the slope got picked in is there's so much retaining walls going in all over town, new construction and existing, that over the 500 square feet, the 6% would pick it up, and those retaining walls would then be reviewed.
Yeah, no, Heather, I meant to include new construction in what I just said, that it was meant to pick up smaller houses than the ones covered by 1 through 6. But yeah, absolutely, new construction.
I'm sorry if this has already been discussed, but my issue is in subdivision, if they go for, right, we're not viewing the house, we're just viewing the lot. But in some instances, when you are building a larger house than originally proposed in your subdivision or laid out, or because we don't really review the house itself, but you are doing modifications, and sometimes you're adding retaining walls and you're doing other things that we are not reviewing because the subdivision doesn't review that. So I would rather see subdivision continue and then this get picked up if it is outside of what was reviewed in subdivision.
So
if they change let's say if you were going to build your house and you change it and you make it a bigger footprint, sometimes you will require those retaining walls and stuff. Those were not part of the subdivision review because you changed this size of that property. Therefore, those retaining walls should be reviewed and should be picked up. They shouldn't be given because you've gone through subdivision.
So I think that Art's second option meets your requirement in that it says that this does not apply to grades approved under subdivision control, but it would apply to any changes from those grades. Did I get that right, Art?
You did.
Okay.
And the difference between that and door number 1 that I laid out is whether you want that to be in conjunction with any construction, or are you concerned that somebody's going to regrade, put in a retaining wall without building a house? And do you want them to have to get site plan approval just to regrade the lot? Maybe they're going to regrade it and then sell it to a developer. I don't know why you do that, but
Well, there have certainly been things coming before the ZBA where someone bought an existing house and decided to regrade the backyard, which was at an insanely steep slope, in order to create flatter areas. So that wasn't part of construction. It was part of landscaping.
and do you want that to be covered? Do you want that to need site plan approval?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, then yes, you would take, I guess, door number 2, as you said, Diab, meaning any change of 6%, 500 square feet, regardless of whether it's in conjunction with construction, as long as it's not grades approved on a subdivision plan.
Great.
Yeah.
I'll jump in and also say that's what I would agree with that. I think that's the way to go.
So we've got 3 out of the 5 members saying they agree. Any other, Heather, Hannon, or Cheryl, do you have any opinions on this?
Yeah, I agree.
I would agree as well.
Okay, so I think we don't have to vote on it now. I think we can just ask Art to come up with the new language, and then we'll come back in, and we will we just have to go through a vote at that point to put it into the subdivision regs.
Well, no, but this is bylaw. This is not regs.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, we'll have to put this through town
fall
meeting.
town. Yeah, this is fall town meeting.
This
Well,
is fall town meeting.
Do you want to try and, I mean, is there any thought to shoot for Springtown meeting?
We can't because the deadline is passed for notification to, we can't,
Okay,
but I mean, this is the short.
okay.
Unfortunately. So next week is our zoning hearing. So it's already been in the paper. We've already notified our zoning.
Yeah, you'd have to have another zoning hearing.
Um,
I'm not urging you
yeah,
to.
actually, so yeah, no, I guess you're right. So I guess we could, I guess, we have to do it this week, get it into the paper this week in order to have it be a certain amount of time before town meeting.
Well, I mean, the planning board meets a half hour before town meeting, and I've seen you approve some,
But
review some articles.
don't we still need to get this out on the warrant?
Yeah, of
Didn't
course.
the warrant already
The warrant
closed,
technically
didn't it?
closed on the 12th, but we're talking to town council right now, so that's.
Yeah, but-
Some
yeah,
council can supersede us.
No, the select board can add it. I'm not suggesting that you try and jam it in. If you want to leave it for the fall, that's fine.
Well, my question is this. So currently we have a case where 2 boards could come in on a single piece of land. The ZBA could. I don't know that this will have a great practical impact if we wait until fall. That my
Oh,
only
I'm going to interrupt. I'm sorry, Dia, but I think there are a couple out there. It could.
Okay, well then we should try to push this forward then. I will leave that scheduling to the current chair.
All right, I will draft.
We have to have a vote to put that on the warrant, or is it, if we're going forward with this?
Well, you don't have language yet, so you can't vote on that tonight. I will get you language, and you can schedule as quickly as you want to review it, ask for it to be put on the warrant, hold a hearing, whatever you want to do.
Okay.
Okay,
Can I, while we're at it, is everybody satisfied that 6% and 500 square feet are the right numbers?
I think there was work done on those numbers originally, which is what set them. To go change it at this point would need a more review of exactly what is to consider changing it. We need to do more of a review, but I have not heard anything regarding changing those. It's just the conflict with the site plan.
Yeah, I believe that this was determined. It was a rough estimate of maybe like of a 9 or a 10-foot retaining wall. Like this was about how much you'd have to do to create, or there was a relationship between 6% for about 500 square feet. Yeah, that corresponds to about somewhere, I don't know. There was some height of a wall that we wanted to review. That was the impetus was two things for this section. One was retaining walls, and the other was drainage.
Yeah, so I think just focusing on making sure that is clarity between this and the subdivision should be the focus, especially with such a tight timeline. But I do think there are subdivisions coming in, and we want to make sure this is clean for everyone going forward. So I do see a point on pushing it and moving it quickly to get it to town meeting rather than waiting to the fall. But Diab, I guess the question goes to you is, are you comfortable bringing that? Is it's going to, well, you or Heather Hannon, are you comfortable
oh,
bringing
yeah,
that?
I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable with us. I personally am comfortable. I will not speak for Heather Hammond.
Are we comfortable doing what?
Going forward and putting it on the warrant for this town meeting versus waiting till fall.
Oh. I mean, I didn't know what Maureen was saying about it being more immediate.
Well, so
Brennan.
you can chime in, Maureen. I guess I'm taking over, Diab. You can chime in, Maureen. I wanted to say that we know that there's a couple developments that are coming up that would be subdivisions. The timeline on that is unknown, but but we know that there are some opportunities that are coming up with subdivisions that might come before us in the next 6 months. Maureen?
Oh, I think it's just best left at that. It's the same, just what you said.
Okay.
Can I move down the page a little bit on what Brian has here?
Go ahead.
952. The second half of it says no certificate of zoning compliance shall be issued. Brian, has Mina had a discussion with you about this concept of a certificate of zoning compliance? Because there were some old ones. There was something arose a few months ago where there was a 1980s certificate of zoning compliance, I thought, and nobody quite knew what to do with it or what it meant. Have you had any such discussion?
So there was someone was asking for a certificate of zoning compliance for some it was like over some like you said, some building in the 70s, but I'd never heard of a certificate of zoning compliance before that. Like you said, this was several months ago, maybe 4 to 6 months ago, but this is not something that is ever really this is the first time it was requested, and I don't think the zoning enforcement officer issues them unless he's asked to, say, hey, is this building conforming or non-conform, or what, someone's asking for a specific thing. So I don't know what this is.
I think Mina and I want to take it out because nobody knows what it is, and the building inspector, I don't think, should sign off in such an amorphous way on things. Anyway, it's obviously it's a related discussion because it's in the site plan section, and if we're going to town meeting on one, I'm thinking, do we need to clean this up as well? Let me talk to Mina about that and see if we're going to recommend a change there as well. Okay, Well, the board has given me the direction I need on the bylaw. I don't know that I mean, then we can come back to the regulations at some point. But I think this is the first priority, and I think this will pretty much solve the problem.
So I wanted, oh, unless someone wanted to talk more about the zoning bylaw, I wanted to talk about the regulations.
I just want to make, Art, that's fine if 9.5.2, that last sentence wants to be taken out as part of that is fine with me. I'd just like to get kind of a feeling of the rest of the board, just so you have clarity, because we're gonna have to post for the hearing, and if that's part of it, we need to include that in the language for the posting of the hearing. So members of the board,
So
pending legal's review of the final sentence for the certificate of zoning compliance.
I'm not sure I would take out the whole sentence, Heather. I haven't really thought about that. I might just say, take out the first half of that sentence and say, you know, any work on the site shall conform in all respects to the site plan, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so it'd be modifying the second sentence to be more in line with current procedures.
So my recollection is that there was this certificate of zoning compliance on 49 Church Street. Am I wrong about that? The dental office, which,
That may be where it came up, that there was one issued decades ago for that.
right, and so.
It was a different one as well.
Okay, so there were two. And there is, so Art, this is not a standard thing. A certificate of zoning compliance is not something that anyone else does.
No, I don't know of it anywhere else. You've got building permits, certificate of occupancy, decisions to enforce or not enforce the bylaw. I don't know a certificate of zoning compliance. I mean, I haven't canvassed our other towns, but I've never run across one of these before.
Okay, so when you are done with let's say you get a building permit, when the zoning enforcement officer signs off on the building permit, isn't that essentially the same thing, saying that it is compliant with all of the zoning?
Yes. Well, the building permit is before the construction.
Right,
The certificate of occupancy may be equivalent to this certificate of zoning compliance, but I don't know why we would use a different term here. C of O is a recognized document. And also the first sentence of 952 talks about roadways, parking, loading, or open space. Then it has the word developed in the third line. And then it says no certificate of zoning compliance shall be issued for any such building or buildings. Well, what building or buildings? We were talking about roadways, parkways, loading, and open space. So I'm not sure that the certificate of zoning compliance is equivalent to a C of O for a building, or if it's intended to be signing off on the retaining wall when somebody decided to terrace their backyard.
okay, and the name of it is procedure use is permitted.
Yeah, I don't know what that title means.
And that doesn't reflect anything in that paragraph at all.
No, that corresponds to 953, which is where the use requires a special permit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, I have to read it in context.
So it doesn't mean that the use is permitted. It means we're talking here about uses that are permitted.
Okay, so, I mean, maybe we need to go off and figure out what the intent of this was in the
It was
context
not-
of everything
it's
else.
Maureen, this is not something that was presented by this board. I can only speak for 21 years, but I would guess this goes back to the 1970s. This is just really antique stuff that never got cleaned up. So I think it's a good proposal to clean it up.
Oh, I agree. I just don't know what this paragraph is supposed to be telling us in the first place, so.
Well, isn't that an issue?
Oh, I agree. I'm just saying that rather than just going in and trying to fix it in place, we should look at the context of 9.5 and figure out what problem it was trying to solve. And if it isn't solving a problem we care about, then we take it all out. If it is solving a problem that we can identify, then we fix it so it really solves the problem.
So the first part of 952 is clear. If you need site plan approval, you can't get a building permit. And that in fact is how the failure to get a site plan approval gets appealed. If a neighbor thinks site plan approval is required, what they do is they appeal the building permit saying it shouldn't have been issued because this prerequisite wasn't in place. So that much is clear. But then when you get into roadways and open space and then the land developed, then it wanders off.
Yeah, so I would be happy if you went and take a look at this and try to figure out why it's wandering. And if it wanders for no good reason, we can just clean it up really dramatically.
Okay. I will say that since you were saying in 9517, you've reaffirmed that you intend a site plan approval requirement, even when there's no house being built, just an existing backyard in Diab's example. If that's what you're doing, then I understand why 952 would talk about something other than buildings, namely open space or parking area or whatever. Somebody might want to regrade their yard a steep slope to create parking up at the street or something. So that's okay. Then the second sentence that talks about such building or buildings, again, it raises an inconsistency. So I think I understand what 952 is trying to do. And if we get that certificate out of the picture and harmonize some of the other language, I think it'll be consistent with 9517 as we're redrafting it.
It seems fine to me. I mean, it seems like a good recommendation from Art.
I concur.
I agree. Heather and Cheryl, do you have any opinions?
No, sounds like Art has the expertise here.
I would concur with Heather. Hannon.
Okay.
Okay.
I will email something to Brian, some proposed language on these both sections. What's today? Tuesday? Well, I'll do it in the next day or two.
All right, I will alert the manager's office that although the deadline is passed, to, I don't know, work magic or something. So,
Just blame it on town council.
okay.
Always a good
I'm
strategy.
sure you've never gotten that before.
So Beth, you were here for the discussion of sort of the extent of subdivision approval on the grading or engineering input. I take it what we've laid out tonight works for you.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Thank you.
Okay. That's all I've got for this evening. That was the focus of the discussion for me.
Coming in, I don't know, I see that Steve has his hand raised. Steve, will you unmute yourself? Did you have a question?
Yeah, just as a point of clarification, would that include a grade change to create a cellar hole? So for instance, an addition on an existing house or?
Oh, the 6% of existing grade, more than 500 square feet?
Correct.
If they're returning the grade back to its original after they dig the hole, my understanding, and actually Art probably can interpret this even better than I can, that then it does not impact that existing grade if they're returning the grade back.
That seems right. Then you haven't had a change in slope.
So the foundation hole itself would not count.
The removal, no. For the building itself, no. It's around the perimeter of it.
So that doesn't seem self-explanatory, but it may be just a point of contention if you're trying to clean this up tight.
Thank you.
Let me just make
So Art, did you understand what he's referencing in terms of clarity of the language?
Yeah, but let me ask Mr. Meinhold if I can. So your hypothetical is that somebody excavates a square that's over 500 square feet for a cellar hole and then does what there?
Builds a house on it, pours a foundation,
Builds a house?
backfills it.
Yeah, no, I don't think. Yeah, I would say that's not included.
Wouldn't you say every new construction would require site plan review then? if we
If
said that would.
If it did, but that's not what the intention of it is. So what he's asking, what Steve is asking is to make sure that when we go to change it, to clarify the language, to be clear that it does not include the actual grade modifications to the actual location of the house itself or the building or structure.
Yeah, because it just seems like there would be a lot of additions, garages, whatever it may be, that would then constitute that change, and you'd be having a lot of these thrown at you.
Yeah, I'm content that the existing language that refers to a change in slope would not be covered by that. I'll think about whether we want to, whether it should be tightened up, Steve. My instinct is that the more you try and specify and exclude, certain, the more complicated you make it, the more room there is to argue about what you didn't say or some ambiguity. If the land is level and you're going down 8 feet and it stays level, to me, even if you don't build on that, it's a future swimming pool. You haven't actually changed the slope. But that's sort of a far-fetched example. Anybody who builds on it, certainly I don't think is covered by this.
Thank you, Steve, for your comment, and thank you, Art. Brian, you had mentioned you wanted to move on to something else. You had a question on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to delve. I mean, I'm happy to delve into another topic completely. It's related to the subdivision rules and regs, and but I don't know if our time is going to allow it, or even if we have much to talk about at all related to the master plan implementation committee. So I'm going to leave it up to you, Chair, of whether we want to, because right now, so it's 8:40. We're supposed to be the agenda.
The master plan implementation committee. I also do not know what I missed, so I'm actually not the best person to ask that question. So I would like to throw it back to Diab. Is at this point, Diab, do you think we've reached with your expectation? And actually to all the board, do you think we've reached the expectation of the discussion of the subdivision rules and regs at this exact moment, and we can come back to it at a different time to continue more discussion on other points of areas?
I think that we've reached the point, I think, where town council can help us. And I think that was the whole point here, was to get town council's input. So unless what Brian's going to discuss is already something on town council's radar.
It's related to drainage of the roads and the lots. So I mean, it's certainly pertinent to the conversation, but it's a totally separate, other potentially longer conversation. And I don't know. I just didn't know if we had the time tonight to do it, or whether we're moving on to the next topic.
If it's going to take a substantial amount of time, maybe we should schedule it, just so we can stay on target.
Schedule it. But I'm very glad to hear that the discussion on the slope and grade was discussed and dealt with. Sound good, Brian?
Sure. Yep.
We'll put it back on the agenda and invite Art back in.
You know it.
All right. Sounds like a plan. Because Art has to come back anyways to talk about his changes. Maureen, your hand is raised.
Yeah, I expected, actually, this was very good, no complaints at all, but I was expecting a short report about where we are with subdivision closeouts.
Yeah, so you had asked for a little bit more information in that Excel sheet, and I could not get, there's about 4 of them that I need to go deeper into the file, into the paper files to find, that were from, 70s and whatnot. But the update at the moment, I mean, we could go through the several that they are working on, if we can give an update. So one is related to the Greek streets. So we actually had a meeting with the road owners, and then also there's gonna be another meeting with the homeowners to try, the best situation would be, we're trying to get everyone to join a HOA, but shockingly, that doesn't seem likely in general to get that many homeowners. You're talking, depending upon which roads we're talking about, somewhere between 30 and 60 homeowners. To try to get them all into an HOA seems to be kind of difficult. The other situation is they just to kind of like a one-time get the roads up to a certain condition into a place where the town would accept them, but we're not, we don't know, we don't know if that's possible either. So the conversation is ongoing. I don't know if Art, you want to add anything related to that, but there's not much to add there, but and then, sorry, yep. Go.
Well,
Yeah,
no,
well,
actually, I'd love to hear from Art because
Yep.
this could stall out and it's really in a limbo place that's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to add to what Brian said. We did have a second, so in November of 2019, we had a meeting with the so-called roads owners and the homeowners. And it was pretty well attended in the select board hearing room. And then we were going to have a follow-up meeting, and then of course COVID hit, so we didn't do anything for a year. We just met again with the roads owners, although not all of them. The representative of the Mahoney's could not be there. So there are three entities that own the roads, most of the roads in what we're calling the Greek Streets, which is Heritage 1, 2, and 3 subdivisions. It's the estate of the Mahoney's or various interests there. It's a religious order in Connecticut that was one of the beneficiaries of, I think, Margaret Mahoney's will. And it's a developer, Jason Brickman. And I said most of the roads because in about 10 of the more recent sales of the lots, the portion of the road in front of that lot was transferred the way you'd expect. So there are some owners that do own in front the road in front of their houses, about 10 out of, what is it, Brian, 80 or 70 total?
Something like that. I think, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the group of roads owners. And we are waiting to hear back from them on a proposal if they're willing to fund any inspection of the drainage infrastructure and or repaving of the roads. The homeowners' position is, and I don't mean that it's uniform or they're monolithic, but the prevailing sentiment seems to be they would like the town to accept these roads. And failing that, they'd like the roads owners to be responsible for them. There is no homeowners association, and as Brian said, not much inclination to adopt one, and maybe even less inclination to accept deeds of the roads after all these years, and taking on the responsibility themselves for the roads. So that could change, and I don't mean to lock any of the parties into any positions. These are ongoing discussions. But at the moment, we're waiting to hear back from the roads owners if there's any kind of proposal that we can put in front of the homeowners. The town's position is that it is just trying to broker a deal, and I said this explicitly. The town has no responsibility for this situation or for the roads, but the town has an interest in seeing that residents have good drainage and good roads. And so they're trying to bring the parties together to see if something can be worked out. If the roads were brought up to they wouldn't be current standards, as Beth pointed out in that meeting, because they wouldn't have sidewalks, they wouldn't be current standards in certain ways. But if they're brought up to snuff, whatever that means, and the town wanted to accept them, or if the town wanted to accept them, with money put in escrow in order to then bring them up to snuff. I had a question about whether that's legal, whether you can have a sort of a conditional acceptance. But that's largely a political issue. I mean, so I don't want to say the town couldn't do that, but the prevailing sentiment on the town side seems to be that there's not a lot of appetite by town meeting to accept any roads and including these roads. So it's still fluid, but Maureen, it may stall out. It may be that there is no resolution, and eventually there could be litigation between homeowners and roads owners, or somebody could take a run at suing the town. Although I don't see any plausible claim there. But eventually something's if nothing is done, some system is going to fail or some road is going to be in bad enough condition that somebody's going to, you know, make a case out of it. Who knows?
And I trust you are aware of the McCall Road and how the town ultimately, I think with your predecessor, and I wasn't involved, but there is a, I believe it's a Winchester Code of Bylaws law that has the town has the right to go in and compel reconstruction of the roads.
Well, I know the betterment process. There's a betterment bylaw implementing the betterment statute. I don't know about compelling reconstruction.
No,
So,
that's
Maureen, I
what
think
they
you are,
did.
Maureen,
I don't
yeah,
know.
Maureen, you're talking about the, Maureen, I believe you are talking about the betterments.
Okay, yeah, it sounds
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But they
Yeah, the
did
town could
compel them.
do the work and charge the homeowners. It's complicated by the fact that ordinarily when the town does, if the town came in and improved it a private way, it's improving what the homeowners own. It's not contemplated that some third party owns those roads. The town comes in and improves it and charges the homeowners. The homeowners might well have a
Right.
problem with that.
Oh, geez.
So
Good Lord.
so that it's possible to use the betterment, you know, and you know, and it is possible that I haven't ruled out using the betterment process, but that is a complication in doing it.
Well, that's about it. Thank you. Good grief.
Yeah, it's I'm not. There's no resolution in the immediate future, but parties are still talking, so we'll see what happens.
Okay, let's move to the master plan implementation committee. And we'll come back to subdivision, some of the subdivision things, and continue this conversation more at another time.
So I was here for the regulations / bylaw issue and the review of old subdivisions. Do you want me to stay on for anything else?
No, I don't see a need to, Art, but thank you so much for offering, and thank you for your time tonight.
Well, thank you all for working through these difficult issues. Even the small issues get thorny, but thank you for making a clear decision on that bylaw issue, and I'll get back to Brian, as I said.
All right, thank you, Art.
Thanks.
Good night, all.
Have a good night. All right, so it is 8:50. I wanted to touch base and have a discussion about the master plan implementation committee. We started getting some things. We had a conversation in the beginning. COVID hit, obviously, and put things kind of in a damper because everyone went into emergency mode. However, I wanted to take a minute to have just kind of a discussion of what our vision is of that, what it might look like, and just a general conversation so that hereafter those can continue the process of building that and getting that committee going. I know that Deb and I had talked to FinCom, and they also are interested in starting to hear more about the implementation committee and the long-term planning of that. It also showed up actually in conversations in capital planning about the long-term planning of the town and the financial impact of that from that perspective as well. So I just wanted to have a conversation, since it's been so long about it, to talk about what people saw when we created this implementation committee as part of the master plan, so it can start getting created and that can get the wheels going. This should be a really top priority from my perspective, although given everything go on, I probably won't have the say, but I think it should be one of the top priorities of the planning board in 2021.
Heather, didn't we have a list of the kinds of representation we would have on it?
We didn't create one, no.
I had submitted a memo a while because this is one of those agenda items that's been kicked down the road like maybe 4 times.
Yeah.
So I'll go find this very quickly.
Yeah, Brian created one. The planning board did not.
Right. Yeah.
I just thought I had seen something.
I have a similar memory, Heather, so it's not just you.
No, Brian did create it. We did not. the planning board did not, but Brian created a recommendation list.
Well, it was at our request.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess it just happened, I don't know, at our request, it was, I guess, as Brian's hunting for it, my own observation, which I've talked to Heather Van Meering directly about it, is that if you really want this to be a successful effort, that it shouldn't be one of those, one from column A, one from column B, one from column C. For starters, many of the existing boards, while it might seem obvious that they send more representatives to this group, the members are already pretty stretched thin. I think that it would be stronger to have people who are problem in general have had an active role in the town, but aren't right now on an especially an elected board, but even some of the more active appointed boards. And my other observation would be the most successful boards I've observed over history are smaller, because that way everybody's involved. So if you do too many, if it gets large, it doesn't work. And I will say, it's not a coincidence. The planning board, we show up, the select board, they show up, the school committee, they show up. And I do think 5 is it's the magic number.
Yeah, I was gonna say that when we had people from different precincts for the other master plan committee, it seemed like a lot of people weren't coming.
That's right. And that would be typical. And I've seen that over the years. That's how it works.
Well, my concern is that we get a fair representation of town residents on this board. And just finding people, even if they aren't on current boards, who are active in the town is essentially biasing us towards a particular viewpoint. I don't know how we expand it beyond there and keep the numbers small, but one of the things I want to make sure we capture are new ideas and new perspectives. And if we end up with a bunch of people who have been here for 25 or 30 years, they are not, I think that we're missing out on a representation on the board.
I think that's a good point. What if people had to apply?
I think that would be a great idea. I think it would be useful also to say, here are the skills of the people we're looking for, so that we could maybe, if for instance, I don't know how you do that, but just applying, but then what is it that you were going to bring to the board if there's a particular skill you might have? I'm thinking about on the Climate Action Committee, when there were a bunch of people who applied for that committee. There were some very particular skills they brought in, and I think if we could highlight what we're looking for, it might give people an idea of how the board might work best.
Also, I think that if we're talking about applying, having to say no to someone who then wants to be on it, if you had some criteria, it would be a little more straightforward as to, why some people were on it and others not. I mean, if you're going to open it up, right? Isn't that?
I agree with you, Cheryl. Having applied for boards in the past and been rejected, no one's ever told me why. They just thanked me for my application. I just wasn't good enough, apparently.
I mean, when we hire staff, we have scoring criteria, or when we fund research, there's clear scoring criteria. We could do it like that, so people know what they're being measured on.
Yeah, I think it's just it's transparency that makes it more clear what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay, so what size board? So obviously I think we all agree the master plan steering committee was very large and at times unwieldy. And I think as it's been pointed out previously, that large number may have caused some people to not feel that they needed to show up. and maybe enhanced the sort of lackadaisical attitude some people might have had. That's not the right way of putting it, but if you know that you're one of 5 people, you tend to show up more because you know your presence really counts. So there we're up to, yeah, there was a huge. So
Yeah, this is 18. In my experience, 15 is usually the max. If you're talking about people with, being able to have the opportunity to give input.
I'd say maybe 8 to 10.
You do want to think of an odd number, a board typically is if there's voting.
that leads us to
How do you
9.
approach precinct members? Because that's kind of calling a particular.
I think we could get geographic diversity in like it could be one of the criteria. So depending on other people's skills, we just make sure that they're representing different areas of town.
What if
Right.
committee members were from different areas of town?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So then you don't even have the precinct member kind of category. You just go for the 10 people.
It could be a form people fill out, and one of the questions is, which precinct are you in?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it would just have a stated goal that we have a diverse, geographically diverse makeup. The other thing that certainly has happened for the Climate Action Committee is there are more people who applied than would possibly be on the board, but those who were not selected to be on the board were invited to come and work on subcommittees so that they could avail their energy and talents in another fashion. So that might be useful because we may need a lot of help, but we don't want to have it too unwieldy on top.
I like that idea because it is a lot of work. If it was only 5 people.
Yeah, because I think some people might actually prefer not to be on a committee, but still want to help do stuff, but not have to sit through too many meetings.
Okay, so do we have a consensus? Kind of on where right now?
Well, if we're going for 10, then if we really are going to have all 5 of the members of the planning board on there, then we're down to 5 people.
I don't think I think there should be 1 or 2 members of the planning board.
Yeah.
Take that on because there's so many other things that the planning board has to deal with that it's going to, and all that other stuff's going to end up taking a back seat. You need just from capital planning alone, housing. I mean, we have seats on other boards and committees that we have to make sure that planning board is going to for capital. Like we're one of the 5 voting members of capital. So I think it'd be better to minimize the planning board and have 1 or 2 representatives of the planning board focusing on this, someone focusing on, right, Deb, you're a voting representative of housing.
Yeah, I can't remember if I'm actually, I don't, yeah, I'll have to figure that out.
I think it would be better to do like in the updates and reports, and then when planning board needs to come in as a full, come in as a full.
Yeah, so I agree. I think 2 people from planning would probably be sufficient.
Well, hang on. I want to throw out, I don't think there should be anybody. It should be the whole group or the chair of that committee, implementation committee should come back to the planning board.
Oh, wait, so you don't think there should be anyone from planning on there,
I do
Maureen?
not.
Okay.
That's
I've
an
seen
interesting
them in other
perspective.
towns. What?
That's an interesting perspective to do it that way.
I would.
Because they do report to the planning board.
I think it's important for some continuity though, because what if we chose people for other skills that they brought, but they weren't involved before, and so I don't know, like they wouldn't have some of that knowledge.
Well,
I
I'm
think-
not going to be here, so I've got no axe to grind, no oar in the water. But I do think that the different members of the board have different perspectives. Plus, there's going to be an open seat with another person. It's just that the 5 people don't see the world the same way. So it's important to maintain the integrity of the implementation committee and let them come back so that the entire planning board then is able to judge what's going on.
So your concern is that the person from the planning board might have just a personal opinion, which would essentially override what the full board would have? I'm
Well, I
trying to,
wouldn't phrase it quite that way, but I think that any person there has some influence that the others don't have. And I think it's not that, it's just we're all human beings. I don't think it's one person versus another. And that's why I said I'm not going to be involved in it. It's just you're talking about governance again and just how what happens in government. You really want, if this board's going to be I guess you'd say to some degree empowered with working with the action plan and figuring out what are the priorities, because there'll have to be in conveying recommendations. Are they recommendations, or are they going to actually try to move? Actually, I'd like to know that. Are they trying to move the agendas and pick from among the different items? What's going on with this committee?
so,
I disagree with what Maureen is saying, partially because I think one of us would end up attending all their meetings anyway, because we would want to know what was going on. And I don't think any of us pretend that we are speaking for 4 other people.
Well, sometimes that is true, that a representative is supposed to represent the board.
Can I ask a question? I'm just wondering, I mean, if this is a priority of the planning board, to make sure that this is, this is our main focus for 2021, unless I'm reading this sheet wrong, and maybe there's some language cut off above this that I'm missing the point. I'm trying to understand why wouldn't, I would think just putting it in the, that it might just start to not get done, I guess is what I'm thinking, if we're not involved.
yeah, that's my concern as well, is that I don't know, I think that we need to have some direct connection back to the planning board, if only to provide that context and the impetus to move forward. Because this really, it comes down onto the planning board to make sure that the master plan is implemented. So the implementation committee, I think, has always been sort of a advisory committee. I don't know that we've ever thought they would have I don't think we can give them powers legally.
Why not? You could.
Well, I don't know that. Well, I don't know that who that we is. Is this something we have to go through legal? We certainly can't delegate our powers to them.
Well, the only power the planning board has under the law is to create. The verb is make, to make a master plan. That's it. You can read it in Mass General Law, and after that, implementation is not. It's implementation as a part of the master plan is in there, but who handles it is not spelled out. So after that, you've got a question of what is this committee charged with doing? And I don't see any language yet that tells me what this committee's doing. But the point would be that they could, let's phrase it that way, start looking through the action plan and figuring out where to advocate or to actually even sponsor bylaws. The role of the planning board is to advise the town meeting on zoning. Other than that, the planning board could advise on anything that's related to the growth and development of the town, but that's it. So there are choices.
Well, you raise a good point that we haven't actually laid out what the role of this committee is. Maybe it's a
I
little.
thought it was advise. I'm going to just interject. I thought it was to advise the planning board and also other boards and committees, and to work through, to steer the master plan forward. That's why I didn't think a member of the planning board needed to sit on it. Brian, obviously, sorry, Brian, but I know you'll probably end up staffing it. So the continuity is with Brian if it's purely advisory. If it is not, and I guess this would be a discussion of the next board is what if it is not advisory and it does have, it's going to start making warrant articles and stuff like that, then yes, a member of the planning board is on there, but the planning board can create a policy. The current sitting members of this board, I have never, I have not seen a problem with them representing the board outside of where the board has discussed, but I do know that there's an issue sometimes with that. And so it could be simply a policy that planning board member is to represent the board and not, the board itself and not individual interests of themselves. If they are, I mean, you could easily do that through a policy or whatever, if you do give them authority. But I always thought that the implementation was a working group and also advisory, and that the planning board has the final. They're also.
Let me jump in. I agree with everything you said, but just to modify it a little bit, that some of the action plan authority, for example, on streets or roads and let's say parking, whatever, some of it would go to the select board. Some of it would go to the historical commission has a role. I don't remember whether there's anything in conservation commission, but there actually are quite a variety of quite a number of town agencies that could be encouraged to bring something forward that's right now in the action plan. So this committee could be fairly independent, frankly, of the planning board and just take this document and try to promote different parts of the plan to different agencies of the town.
So yeah, I'll chime in, Maureen. Maureen's definitely hitting on kind of what's generally accepted or what's been done in the past, let's say 5 to 15 years related to master plan implementation committees. So it's unclear whether or not a planning board member would be involved or not in general. But what is kind of clear is that generally you're looking at monitoring the progress of the plan. And then meeting, like Maureen says, meeting with all the boards and commissions and committees and staff that they have those tasks assigned to them in the plan, right? So not the master plan implementation committee, but the boards, committees, staff, all these people that have tasks assigned to them in the plan. The implementation committee monitors those progress and then tries to identify strategies and barriers to the progress of the plan.
Well, then why is the planning board at all in charge of setting up the master plan implementation committee? I'm just going to an extreme here because I understand that this committee will have a general, they will be looking at multiple ways of getting things done. And so, yes, they will intersect with a whole bunch of different committees. But if they're going to be that independent, then what actually is the role of the planning board in this whole thing? If all we've done is, if we've done our part, we've created a master plan, and that's all so, I fear that we're just moving this away from the planning board to the point that there's no connection.
Well, for example, the major thing would be the zoning. Likely, any zoning related proposal that the implementation committee, let's even phrase it, and this would be the thing about the committee, they might be recommending certain zoning ahead of the planning board, but they would likely come back to the planning board because the planning board advises the town meeting on the zoning. So that would be the major link. But if it has to do with, for example, parking, which is something the select board they're the street commissioners, likely the planning board wouldn't be involved. And maybe that's okay.
But then why is the planning board involved in setting up the master plan steering committee?
It's
what
choice.
We've done the master plan. Why isn't this something that town meeting should set up?
It's not mandated anywhere. This is a recommendation.
Did the planning board recommend it?
I mean, I think it's kind of assumed in general, Dia, that it's either the planning department or the planning board who kind of sets this up. I mean, it
Oh,
doesn't really, yeah, it doesn't really, I know you're trying to figure out, well, then what, in terms of our role here, what's going on? I personally think, a planning board member should be involved because they're gonna want to be involved anyway as being a member of the board, like Heather Annan said, is that you're gonna have to know what's going on here. So
Yeah, I mean,
having so that's my view.
I mean, I'm trying to understand if this is an inherently independent committee, and if it is going to be advising or proposing, and certainly I agree, Maureen, that depending upon the subject matter, they will go and consult with the other boards, whichever board is appropriate. But if they're going to be an inherently independent committee, then they should be as independent from the planning board as they are from the select board or any of the other boards. And so I think that there is still a significant connection between the planning board and the master plan and its implementation. And I believe we should have a member on that board, maybe just the one, maybe not two. But if we're going to really think of this as an independent commission, then it should be completely divorced from the planning board. And at that point, I ask, why should the planning board be the one to determine who sits on it if it's supposed to be an independent organization?
Well, who else would determine that?
Oh, we go to town meeting. Town meeting could say, we're going to create a master plan implementation committee, and the select board will choose some people, and maybe the planning board, and maybe FinCom, and there'll be at-large members selected by, say, town moderator. This is what's happened in other committees that are sort of at-large committees. I'm not advocating we go down that route, but it seems that we have to really be very clear about how we see this committee responding to the charge put in front of it.
Okay, I'm gonna come to an end of the discussion if anyone wanted to close it, because I don't think we're gonna come to any solutions at this moment, but I think it was really good to have kind of everyone's perspective shared a little bit, so that the committee can take it on hereafter. Anyone have any closing comments before we move on to the meeting minutes?
I guess I think that this may as well land in the with all the duties and privileges of the new board. So I really think that's their it's their baby to carry forward.
All right, so let's move on to the approval of meeting minutes. For February 23rd and March 2nd, we had two meetings that day, one at 7 p.m. and one at 8:30 p.m. So we have two meeting minutes from that day. Nancy, I just wanted to just correct your spelling on Morocco. I miss it all the time myself. No disrespect to Morocco, but
I can never remember. I looked it up.
I always put too many C's in or two R's or so it's Muraco, correct? Maureen?
I got it.
Yeah. All right. Any other edits or comments? We can start at each one individually, or we can just do all three. That was actually the only comment I had on all three of them.
I just have, I believe, one comment on February 23rd.
Which one? What would you like? Yeah.
And if you look on page 3, section 5, pre-application meeting for 831 Main Street. And there was a question I asked about how many floors were being added. And I believe Mr. Lewandowski responded saying they were going to, the total would be 3 floors. Not the number added, but there would be a total of 3 floors.
How would
And that
you,
was it.
you want to give us, let's see, so I see the parking is the only issue. By right, and I put by right, they can build up to a height of 45 feet. He's saying that, but he said he would like to build, said the plan would be for 3 floors.
Yes, if you see right above it where I asked the question, how many floors are being added?
No, I got that.
And he actually responded, I believe, saying that he was going to add 3 floors.
Okay.
Or he was good, no, not add 3 floors. He would build it up to 3 floors. So, and then we went on. Yep.
Oh,
All right, any other comments for the meeting minutes?
I thought they were great. I'm
Nancy,
going
you're
to recommend favorable action. These little edits, we don't have to do spelling corrections in the approval. We're approving. We'll catch them.
Okay,
Although I guess with Dieb's comment, that really is an amendment. So approve as amended.
I will second that.
all right, we are approving February 23rd at 7:30, March 2nd at 7 PM, and March 2nd at 8:30 PM. Those are the ones you're recommending, Maureen?
Yes.
All right, roll call vote, please.
I'm just abstaining because I don't have that pile in front of me.
Okay. Next on the list, roll call.
Aye, Jerry is aye.
Oh, I guess Meister, I.
Wolf, aye.
Von Mering, aye. Motion passes 401 with Hannon abstaining. All right.
Oh, hang on, just a note, if you don't mind, my mentioning to Nancy. So I will put these in the bin for you, Nancy, because there's still some little just spelling type things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Excellent job. Okay.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Before we go into executive session, I know that there was a revised language that was in our packet for the articles that we're going to present at town meeting, or we hope to.
Yep.
And I had one question about the curb cut language.
Yep. So the update for everyone is that we got the drawings and sketches that the planning board requested. What was your question?
My only question is that we don't specify in the text that there is a 3-foot maximum curb radius on the curb corners, although it is in the drawing. So since we specify the linear dimensions in the text, do we also need to specify a maximum 3-foot curb radius in the text? Or is
So
it sufficient to leave it in the drawing?
the reason why we, sorry, the fact that it's 20 at the curb, that's the only thing that matters. They can actually use whatever radius they essentially kind of want they can fit, and it's right around 3, but that's not the important thing. That's not the important or dimension. It's the max opening at curb line. And then so you're saying, oh, you want to say have a max of 3-foot radius here?
Yeah, because to be honest, if I put a 10-foot radius curb corner and it's a 20-foot max opening at the curb line as drawn, that gutter line, the max opening at the gutter line would be huge.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we really do need to specify, so the max curb corner radius provides us with a max opening at the gutter line. And if we don't specify that curb corner radius, then people could have put in huge radii and you could get a really wide opening. So
So I think one of the things that's confusing about that, Diab, is that if it says at the curb line, the curb is that line there, right? It's also called the gutter line. So if you have a 20-foot max at the curb line, then this graphic isn't representing that.
Well, my
It would
reading of the,
actually pull in closer, and so people would use the smallest radius they possibly could.
well, my reading of, well, maybe this drawing is not as clear as we thought. My reading of that max opening at curb line is actually where the driveway apron meets the curb. And so,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
and so the opening at the gutter line is significantly wider.
I think in my sketch I had sent after we had this conversation, I had the 3-foot max note in my sketch that I sent that this is supposed to build off. I think it's just missing the word max on it.
Yeah, but I mean, if Cheryl is, I think Cheryl was interpreting that max opening at the gutter line. Is that, am I misunderstanding you, Cheryl?
Well, I think curb line and gutter line are, I think if this is the image and it says max 3-foot radius, then I think we're okay. But I think if we don't say the radius, then it could be interpreted differently, I think.
Okay, so, but are you saying that you would have, when you heard the word curb line or the term curb line, you actually thought of the curb as it coincided with the gutter?
Yes.
Okay, so that is,
So then the driveway apron would be even smaller.
yeah. So Brian, maybe this diagram could be changed so that the 20-foot max opening at curb line is actually, that with the 2 arrows is actually brought down so it intersects exactly where we want it to. I'll draft something up.
Which is this corner, right? I mean, that's what you're.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at my copy and not yours, so I can't see what you're doing. My apologies.
I would basically say 20-foot maximum opening for driveway apron, and then have a maximum radius of 3 feet for the curb to the gutter line.
Okay, yeah, that works. That's very clear.
Is
20
engineering
foot.
on this call?
No, it's because we weren't, no, she asked if she could leave after the subdivision rules and regs, because we weren't gonna be talking about this, but,
Okay.
it's possible that, you know, I gotta have to talk, it's really Brian Manter who made, who we'd be talking to, but
Yeah, I just want to, so what Dia noticed is that in the update in our packet that the word max was missing. So I am fine cleaning it up so that it is clearer in terms of the curve. We used when we used the references that were done in other towns and cities, so that's where the language came from. We want to tighten it up to be even more explicitly clear. That's fine too. But I do think we need to get the word max in there. It's when I did the sketch during the meeting that I sent, the word max was in there. It needs to get put back in.
so I think, yeah, I
It's
think
got mixed.
maybe we get rid of this word gutter line. It says 20 feet max opening at the driveway apron. We have it doing just like this, and then it says granite curb corner, maximum 3-foot radius.
Yeah.
Okay.
It all has the same intention. It's just clearer.
Yeah, no, got it.
And then if you do that for the, there are 2 diagrams, so just make sure. both
Right, yeah,
diagrams
of
get it.
course, yeah.
Yep.
Well, here actually,
Oh, that's right.
there's no curb line, so it doesn't matter here. This
Yep,
is ready to go. Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
Thank you, Dia, for picking up that little hiccup in the sketch. I would like to move to executive session. Does someone want to make a motion?
Do we need the special language?
You need to go in executive session and state the reason why.
Yeah, I know, but there's magic language that we used last time. It was something about,
Here, I'll get the magic language on the board here.
thank you.
Hold on. Here we go. For this.
Okay, so I move that we move into executive session for the employee evaluation of Brian Zakelli to discuss the reputation, character, and professional competence of the town planner.
Is there a second?
Yes.
So to the public, just so you know, we're gonna go into, we're probably gonna do the vote now. We'll move into executive session. For anyone who's listening, we will not be returning back. So this will be the only things that the planning board will be discussing here forward. And we'll go right into adjournment, come out of executive session and go into immediate adjournment. We will not be having any discussions on anything outside of what is stated as executive session. So you don't need to hang around and you can enjoy your evening. With that, we do need to do a roll call vote. We always do a roll call vote with Zoom, but especially for executive session, those are required by law. So roll call vote, please.
Hannon, I.
Jarius, aye.
Meister, aye.
Wolf, I.
Von Mering, aye. The planning board is now moving into executive session. Thank you so much to all the participants who have joined us, and we'll see